Welcome to the Produce Moms Podcast, where we believe there is a produce mom in all of us. I'm Lori Taylor, founder and CEO of the Produce Moms. For 10 years, I sold fresh produce to over 300 grocery stores in the U.S. And today, my team and I are fully focused on inspiring people to eat more fruits and vegetables. This show is just one of the ways that we hope to inspire you and your family to eat more produce and live a better life. If you like what you're hearing on the podcast, join our community of almost 40,000 in all 50 states and over 30 countries by visiting theproducemoms.com/subscribe. And be sure to subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes. Thanks for being here. Enjoy today's show. Welcome back, everyone. Today on the Produce Moms Podcast, we are welcoming Dr. Jenna Bell. My goodness, this woman is a total superstar. Right now, she is serving as the Vice President of Nutritional Science for Crop One, a really exciting, this is among the largest vertical farms in the world. Their mantra is the future of farming. Their mission is to solve the world's food problems one crop at a time. And they've brought in Dr. Jenna Bell to really help spearhead, this nutritional science. And this woman has so much amazing background. She did nutrition and communications with companies like PepsiCo, Danone, LaCroix, Quaker. The list goes on. And on top of that, she's a 2-time Ironman finisher. She's completed 3 marathons. And she's a mom of 2. So Jenna, welcome to the Produce Moms Podcast. We're really glad you're here.
Thank you, Lori. You made me sound much cooler than I actually am. I appreciate that.
No, you are. It's been a joy getting to know more about you, Dr. Bell, as well as Crop One. So please, let's brief our listeners now. What is Crop One?
Well, we're actually part of that innovative industry of controlled environment agriculture that is becoming more and more popular and getting more attention in media from a finance perspective as well as technology. And really, all of this grew out of global concern. So we have the Sustainable Development Goals that were set forth by the UN several years ago, but then also it's trickled down and we recognize that, a third of our land that has traditionally been farmed on is becoming unusable. And we have climates that, whether it's deserts or natural disasters, weather threats, think about the Caribbean and the hurricanes, and the need for a resilient infrastructure and food supply is becoming an international issue. We actually use 70% of our water goes towards outdoor farming. And so that's also a precious resource. We also waste a lot of food. About a third of the food is wasted. And then also, everybody may have read or been concerned about the contamination of leafy green vegetables. And actually, the foodborne illness that is derived from E. coli, green leafy vegetables are now the biggest culprit. And we grow, 75% of our produce in California. And so basically, Crop One, along with the fact that it's predicted that we're going to have 9 billion people to feed. And if we choose to phase out pesticides, we'll really need to grow food on a smaller space. So that's basically what we're doing. Crop One is building farms, high density, high yield farms, in completely controlled and contained vertical hydroponic farms. So all of those adjectives, but we need far less land to grow. So, a crop, an acre of us is like 400 acres of outdoor farming. We use 95 to 99% of the amount of water required for traditional farms. And we're kind of different.
So 95 to 99% less water.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah.
And we also do something where we have what's different. One of the things that we do a little differently is that we have a multi-cut harvest. So we're driven by the plants, and then we also have plant scientists and agronomists and research and develop. That's really a top priority. So we actually have a multi-harvest, so we can actually increase our yield from the same root ball that the plant is grown with. So we also don't need to worry about the water side of it. We get to use water and preserve it because we purify it, and then the plants themselves clean it. So it's this like reuse, recycle, repeat kind of thing. And we grow actually in boxes, in essence, like large ones, obviously, but we don't have an open space, we have a modular system, so that we have these sealed rooms that are individualized, and so that they have their own control, their own fertigation, water supply, airflow. So it's like building blocks or Legos, and so it can scale up, or we can, to a 100-ton farm or 50-ton farm, to a 1 ton, down to 1 ton.
Right.
And so
it's so phenomenal. This, as you're describing it, I want to tell our listeners, like, visit crop1.ag online, and it kind of comes to life for you visually as what Dr. Bell is describing. This is, it's just so scientific, but in all the right ways from the consumer standpoint. You know what I mean?
Right. And it's basically, it does look, you look at the LED lights, and you look at the racks and the precision that's used, because we are modular, external and internal. So our racks are modular as well, kind of so you can remove one, and they're easy to clean, and they're not built too high up, because we don't want to build farms that are going to put people at risk from falling off of ladders. So it looks very scientific, but truly it's like we're plant whisperers. We just do the conditions and the environment based on what the plants tell us. And that's based on their yield, the health and their growth and texture and all of the qualities and characteristics we look for when we, put together a salad. So it looks fantastical, and it's actually based on, this is the way that the plants want to grow, and this is how they are healthiest.
Right. Right.
And so on these little boxes, or not very little, 320 square feet up to 10,000 square feet, basically.
Exactly. So, one of my favorite statistics, so to say, about Crop One, and truthfully, one of the reasons I was so excited about connecting with you, Dr. Bell, and telling the Crop One story on the Produce Moms podcast is because Crop One is among the largest vertical farms in the world. So educate us now on where these farms are located and where the products can be found.
So I like to think of Crop One is a farm building company rooted in technology and plant science. And so right now we have Fresh Box Farms, which is the brand that we sell under in the greater Boston area. And we're in 40, I want to say we just added a couple. So I want to say 43 stores now in the greater Boston area. And what's interesting and what we're really proud is that we've been growing consistently every single day without interruption since 2015. And if you think back, or at least I think back to 2015, I don't even remember really talking about this area of the agriculture industry.
Right.
One point I find really different as someone that, started there mid 2019, I was so surprised by the level of plant science. We have biologists, and like the farm team itself. So software developers, engineers, and plant scientists, like that, just like myself from nutritional science, geek out on research and development. So we have about 24 cultivars that we commercialize. What makes us so large is a contract that we were awarded in 2018. We're actually in a partnership. We have a joint venture with Emirates Flight Catering. And this is super interesting that Emirates Airlines is like high end. They're based out of
it's
Dubai.
Like the gold standard. Yeah.
Right. And I was talking to their catering, and he said they do 260,000 meals a day. It's just bonkers. But anyhow, so they wanted Dubai has to import everything that they use, as many other areas do. There's different parts of Asia, and arguably, I used to live in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And if you drive 3 hours west, and go to Cuba, I'm not saying that wrong. It's Cuba, New Mexico, or Acoma. They also have to import the food. And so we're building a 390,000 square foot farm space there. And so that's expected within the next, hopefully by the end of this year, we'll be rocking and rolling with that. But, as you can imagine, if you've ever even updated your own bathroom. It takes a long time. But we also have a few other projects in the U.S. and so yeah, we're expanding and building
and expanding globally at that. Yeah. No, it's
and
great.
I think it's important that we have an eye on the global side of it, because there will be benefits in the United States as well. We unfortunately do have food deserts and places where we could really urbanize farming and do high density in smaller spaces. And for us, I think it's a lot to do with climate. We just can't have all of our food grown in California, or 75%, and expect to have the greens we want year round.
That's right. And it comes back to that mission, Crop One's mission, to solve the world's food problems one crop at a time. So that's great to see, all this development have such great purpose, and really it all points right back to that corporate mission, folks, which you got to love. And, one thing that really stuck out to me when I was exploring the crop1.ag website was a video, and I believe it was your CEO talking through the gross margin positive status of your farm and your operation. And she really emphasized, she told the whole story as to how that kind of happened, and emphasized the way that you've mitigated the cost of your operation. Is there anything you can elaborate, or just kind of tell our listeners what that's all about?
Sure. This whole industry is really electrifying agriculture. So there is a consumption component, and that is energy consumption. How do we turn electrons into calories, basically? And there would be some cost to it. From the beginning, we have had our eye on carbon neutrality. So we want to make sure that we maximize our yield while being as efficient as humanly and technology possible. And so we increase our yield with a multi-cut system and seed development program. We also are very, very carefully improving our own proprietary software, farm manager software and control system, and using sensors and using digital feedback in order to not overfeed the plants, turn lights off. We can do interrupted energy use. We don't have to have LEDs on. We don't have to have the lights on all the time. And speaking of the LEDs, that's one of the ways that you can become more efficient. The LED market has changed dramatically, and the amount of energy used to light up a mod basically is far less, and it's getting less every single day. So it's costing less. Our modular-based farming allows us to keep the cost down, because we have a confined environment. It's a sealed grow room, and so it looks like a small shipping container in essence. But we really we integrate ways to decrease the amount of energy that goes into it, and we optimize things like the temperature and humidity and CO2 at the exact point that this plant needs to flourish. So we don't just go in and turn on the LEDs and an air conditioner and just see what happens. So that's allowed us we're at a couple times the amount of yield as some of the other, the typical vertical farms. We've decreased expenses, so that's why we have a 40% profit margin. And then we also have tools for payback over time, and that's looking at, how can we have technology that can be patented, or is patented, I should say. So we've really, it's the whole thing. It's everything, every little bit that goes into it. And one thing I'll say about the carbon neutrality that is quite phenomenal. So
it's so important.
Plants actually, so important. Yeah, and plants, we're not carbon neutral at this time. No one is in the vertical farming industry, but we are moving more towards it at Crop One every single day, because scalability is really that key. So as we get larger, plants actually need the CO2. We can manage the amount of CO2 they get, give them just enough so that they can start to clean or be carbon sinks on their own. And also looking at what kind of plants can grow adjacent that are going to sink more or require more carbon to grow, and that can help to equal this out. And then, long term, the ultimate goal really is to align with electric companies. And so kind of share the cost of energy. The energy that they produce will be able to use for plant growth.
Interesting.
So yeah, it's really exciting. And we know our fresh box farms, like the selling price of it, it's not that it's this margin isn't due to us charging more. We're the same as, organic produce.
Right. Oh, interesting. Well, thank you for sharing. That's tons of insight. And, we really need to talk a little bit more about your background, Dr. Bell. I mean, I love the fact that you are the Vice President of Nutritional Science for Crop One. You have a PhD. You're a registered dietitian, still very active in that RD community. Tell us more about your background and really what attracted you and led you to Crop One.
Well, I've been very fortunate to find myself with Crop One. I think that, being in nutrition, being in dietetics all of these years, to now join this team of innovators, and I'm ancient. I'm like 47 now. No, I'm just kidding, but I am 47. Being at this stage and getting involved with this team led by Sonia Lowe. She's an investor. She's a culinary expert. She's actually a certified chef. She's lived all over the world and speaks 7 languages, as I mentioned to you before we got online.
Yeah.
And then also, we have this deep bench of scientists. So we have plant scientists, engineers, agronomists. Everything I've done has been rooted in nutrition. So back since I took Foods and Dudes, back in, I guess I was like 18 at the time. And then prior to that, I had been working, that was in college, working in school in food service and healthcare, in the healthcare industry. I started out as a dietitian and I focused on AIDS, HIV, in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and nutrition support. And then I started doing some teaching. And next thing you know, I'm doing a PhD in health and human performance, focusing on exercise physiology. That's what brought me to the sports dietetics and to the Ironman, because how many times can you present to a group of triathletes without actually doing a triathlon? So that you have to eventually do it. I was for a few years, I was a Buckeye at the Ohio State as a professor and in their medical dietetics program, and started getting some opportunities to work with food companies. How do I translate this science? How do I talk about this? And so I wrote a sports nutrition book with a colleague of mine and started doing a little bit more here and there with industry, and then was invited to work on a project with Pollock Communications in New York City. And then 13 years later, here I am. So I worked with a lot of different foods. I love working with commodity foods, with cranberries, rice, pulses, that sort of thing. But I met Dr. Dean Falcone at a colloquium that we were both presenting at, and I loved what he was talking about. And then he was talking about phytonutrients and how the flavonoids in the plants that they're growing can actually be, the amount can be adjusted by the conditions. And he's saying all of these things they're so pertinent to nutrition, but he's never bringing up human health. And so I said to him, we're on a shuttle, and I said to him, oh my gosh, this is insane. I'm going to work with you. You're going to hire me. And so within a month, actually, he brought me in. And so I'm that bridge between the high-tech ag conversation and public health and nutrition. So I love it. Very, very pleased to be here.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, and of course, like that grit is part of who you are, or else you wouldn't, you wouldn't complete marathons and Ironmans and whatnot. But it's, gosh, I love that story.
Boss people around.
Hey, no, it's a positive thing. You know your worth, you know your talents, and you can identify who needs you most. I love that story. Thank you for sharing. Now, one thing, and so you kind of touched on this, because one thing, when I first saw your title, Dr. Bell, like Vice President of Nutritional Science, at first I was kind of like, well, yeah, of course. I mean, what more is there to know? Fruits and vegetables are nutritious. We know that. So
Yeah.
I was, my wheels were kind of spinning on what is her role prior to us speaking, and really prior to you just sharing how you landed at Crop One. But we gotta get your thoughts and ask the question, because I'm sure our listeners have it. What's that title mean? Like, are Crop One products more nutritious? Are you trying to develop the most nutritious, crops? Just explain more about what nutritional science even means for a farm that exclusively grows the world's most nutritious foods, which is produce.
Right. And produce, farm grown produce. I mean, think about the fruits and vegetables. They have naturally occurring antioxidants. They have different nutrients or phytonutrients that are protecting themselves. So when there's weather or too much sunshine or not enough water, that plant grows, builds its own defense system. And a lot of the nutrients that are that part of that defense system are what makes them so nutritious. Now, say we remove all of the weather conditions and we put them in a mod, or like we call them, these growing, these sealed off grow rooms. Now what happens? Well, we're in control of the environment. So we can control the lighting. We can control when it's night and when it's daytime for them. We can control the CO2 levels, the temperature, humidity, the nutrient provision. We can control the nitrogen content that they take in. And so that's going to influence the amount of nitrates that are in the green leafy vegetables themselves. We have some opportunities that traditional farms just don't have just by nature.
Sure.
Literally by nature, actually, because, they can't control the weather. And unfortunately, sometimes they can't control water purity, or whether or not there's a neighbor that's fertigation system is,
Sure.
there's a water coming in that has more nitrogen than they would prefer. So we're able to control all that. And what happens is then basically the plant physiology, if we have control, we're going to elicit a change in plant metabolism. And so we're taking advantage of their natural responses to the plant environment. And what we've done, is we take samples of every crop we have, or every of the cultivars. And so that we can match that, what's going on in that plant from a nutrition and nutrient and nitrate level, and what were the lights like? What was the CO2? And so we have been, it's a work in progress, right? Because it's science. And also we do have to wait 28 to 35 days for plants to grow. But what we found is that the way that we can make shifts, we actually can increase the amount of nutrients above and beyond what the standards are referenced for outdoor from the USDA. So off the shelf, for example, we went to the grocery store, we bought our own product, looked at it, tested it from a nutritional analysis, and our kale and romaine tend to be higher than potassium. So what did we do in that batch? So how do we draw that back to conditions, and how do we improve it further? Romaine is higher in calcium. We seem to have higher vitamin A across the board. Our biosynthesis of flavonols or anthocyanins or glucosinolates, those are all, just think of them as like difficult to pronounce words that are phytonutrients that help to protect your cells, basically. But we like to make it sound really fancy. So what we're working on now is, how can we make tweaks that increase antioxidant production? So we're not producing anything above and beyond. We're not making like some power multivitamin here. We're just simply making a few changes so that the plant can get the most out of its,
like the most nutritional vigor possible. Yeah. No, I love that.
And they do it to protect themselves, my favorite is like cranberries, having worked with them for so many years. They're tart. And and they're red, dark red, and the proanthocyanidins that give them that color, also, provide them that redness, but then that tart is actually their natural pesticide. And I think that's amazing.
That is amazing.
so acidic and so tart, but it's really just to protect themselves when they're out in the environment. The last thing that is appealing from a nutrition standpoint is that we purify our water. We use municipal water, but it's so variable, especially with heavy metals. And, you'll have trace amounts, or you'll have arsenic or other cadmium or heavy metals that you don't want to have.
Sure.
And this is something we can manage that's harder to do in an outdoor farm. So we purify it. So the water basically only has what we've added to it. And then, after the plants are harvested 2 or 3 times, the water is actually still pure because they're little root legs. Which I know they're not called root legs, but their roots, I think of them as like moving around and like cleaning the water. So
yeah, no, that's amazing. It's a great visual and descriptor as far as I'm concerned.
I think of them treading water is what I think.
Yeah, no, it's a perfect descriptor. I think keep using it. You've got my permission. No, in all seriousness, this show has it's been such a joy. I mean, Dr. Bell, thank you for sharing your time with me and with our audience today. Definitely want to make sure that everyone knows to connect with Crop One. They have a great and very informative website. It's what I use to prepare for this show. crop1.ag. You can, see their whole story, their technology, members of their team, all their news and updates. I mean, it's just like all right there. So Crop1, CROPONE.ag, AG. So definitely check that out, folks. But, Dr. Bell, before we go, you have the final word. So please let our listeners know what you want them to take away, or any closing thoughts that you might have, and sign us off from today's show.
Thank you. Well, I think that really just looking at what we're doing is trying to grow with technology and infrastructure so that people can have fresh produce locally. So use less land, use a fraction of the amount of water required for outdoor farming. But then we're also motivated by food resilience and human health. And we want to make sure that we're growing more with less, that we're moving towards carbon neutrality, and really providing fresh, local, high quality, safe produce in areas that unexpectedly that could not grow previously. So we're going to grow an enormous amount of food in a tiny amount of land with a tiny amount of water to complement traditional farming. So that's our long-term, short and long-term goal.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Produce Moms Podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a featured guest, just send an email to Lori@theproducemoms.com. We know there is a produce mom in you because there's a produce mom in all of us. Join our community on Facebook and all social platforms. Help us change the way America eats. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.